David Andrew Weeb, founder of Spark Infinity niche-based Facebook group. David, what is going on in Spark Infinity?
Spark Infinity has been growing pretty rapidly since January. We started with literally 4 or 5 members, now to well over 1,400 people, serving creatives and creators, poets, artists, visual artists, musicians, actors, actresses.
What should members of Spark Infinity be prepared for? What are the live shows about?
We like to interview people and get a sense of who they are, the kind of things they do, highlight them, and especially their amazingness, their personality, their superpowers, whatever makes them great. That's what we like to highlight in those conversations.
So how could members of Spark Infinity also benefit from Bump Global?
For one thing, there are so many amazing heart-centered founders of various niche-based Facebook groups that if you wanted to be interviewed, you could just put yourself in the middle of the storm and find all kinds of groups to be featured in and interviewed in all day long. And the other thing is, if they have the desire and the work ethic to build their own niche-based Facebook group and blow it up, that's another opportunity that's waiting for them. And I only see things growing from there.
Thank you. Thanks for joining me. So before we officially begin here, there's something I gotta let you know. If you can't hear me or if I'm a little quiet, trust me, the volume is turned up as high as it will possibly go on my audio interface and the compression is cranked. Please just turn up your headphones or turn up the audio on your computer. That's the best way for you to listen in, because at the end of the day, I don't want my mic to distort. And if I turn up any more, or if I use artificial means such as those within StreamYard or whatever platform I happen to be using to stream that day, and crank up my audio some more, my voice distorts. So it's much easier for me to work with a smooth audio after the fact and bump the level than it is for me to work with distorted audio and then try to fix it after the fact. So again, if you're having trouble hearing me for whatever reason, I encourage you to turn up your computer. You have that option. And it should go much higher than, well, it should go higher, period. Okay, let's begin. Welcome to Spark Infinity Office Hours, where creative journeys unfold in real time. In these intimate sessions, our hosts open their creative playbooks to share fresh discoveries, current experiments, and hard-won insights from their personal artistic paths. Whether diving into recent breakthroughs or working through creative challenges, each office hours session offers a raw, unfiltered look at the creative process in action. Join us to explore the practical tools, mindset shifts, and unexpected revelations that shape our ongoing artistic evolution. Today's quote of the day goes something like this: "True creativity is tapping into the source. In that state, genius flows effortlessly, not because of your intellect, but because of your direct connection to all." Who said that? Oh, I guess apparently I said that because I couldn't find a quote that matched what I wanted to say. Today's date is November 13th, 2025, and if you happen to be watching this on any other day, you are much better at time travel than I am. You need to teach me your tricks because, yeah, time travel would be a really nice thing to be able to do. We are continuing our conversation on self-publishing today, and today's topic is creation and completion, from blank page to finished manuscript. I don't believe in making a big deal about the manuscript. However, I do understand for most authors and most creators, this is it is the biggest piece and it's the hardest piece. And there's no denying that even for me, the manuscript is the hardest part, because at times I've gotten rid of manuscripts and started over from scratch. At times I've shelved manuscripts to be used later. So I understand that this is the challenge. This is the most challenging part. Can be very painful and a long process. That's why today we're talking about manuscripts. I see a hi from Ghost Call. Hello, Ghost Call. Good to see you on the stream. Thanks for joining. So let's get into this. The first topic, as you've already seen on screen, is overcoming perfectionism and never good enough syndrome. I'll go back a slide. So right here, you can see some of the tips that AI has given us, because some of these slides are most of these slides are AI generated. It does a good job. I think these are pretty good tips. I'm mostly going to be coloring outside of the lines, though, and giving you my perspective on these issues. However, look at these slides as like in addition to, right? I'll give you my tips. I'll give you my ideas. I'll give you my steps, everything that I know about writing books. I've self-published 13 books, by the way. And that might be worth noting. That might be something worth mentioning here. But, these are pretty good, let's say, conventional tips to bring to the table. So at the very least, they're worth it. So look at it as an addition to whatever I bring to the table. First thing we need to talk about is the crappy first draft. If you've ever heard of the book, what was it again? Bird by Bird by Anne Lamott. Worth checking out. Anybody who wants to read a book or wants to write a book ever needs to read that book immediately. You need to read Anne Lamott's Bird by Bird. Yes, reading is sometimes a painful process, but many people describe writing as a painful process. You know how you become a better author? By reading more books. Read more books if you want to become a better author, period. You're going to learn how to write. You're going to get ideas on how to form sentences and paragraphs. You're going to get ideas on how to format the interior layout of your book. Check out what other authors are doing. It's a very, very important step. Anyway, Anne Lamott calls this the shitty first draft, okay? The bottom line is this. One way or another, you just need to get words on pages. That's your first step. Everything else is completely irrelevant. The words you use don't have to be good. Your ideas don't have to be good. The first step is get words down on page. Then we can mold it into something good. Then we can start piecing together or editing out things that don't make sense, whatever it is we need to do to make the manuscript a better one. But first and foremost, let's just get words on pages, okay? And as many as possible. You want to embrace messiness and imperfection. You can literally just like write down things as they come to you, ideas as they come to you, start drafting things. Oh, I think this needs to go in my book. This needs to go in my book. It could be disconnected thoughts. It could be bullet points, whatever you want. Embrace messiness and perfection. Just start getting stuff down on the page. And also don't worry about perfecting what you want to say. You're going to do that later. You're going to spend a lot of time perfecting what it is you want to say later because you're going to go through the book multiple times. Even if you have an editor, even if you have a team of editors, even if you have other people helping you do the whole thing, you're still going to be reading through the book at least once. Chances are you're going to be reading through it many times. So make sure to get it all down before worrying about editing. I like to go, to be honest, and to open the curtain a little bit, I like to self-edit as I go. This is the number one thing a lot of people say don't do when it comes to writing, but I like to polish the sentence. I like to polish the paragraph as if it was the last thing I'm ever going to put in there. But I'm 13 books in, so many of you are just not going to be there. So your goal first and foremost is just to get, as Anne Lamott says, a shitty first draft done. Second, here's a really great option for a lot of you. Talk your book, right? Don't write. Just discard writing altogether, especially if you don't like it, especially if the process is just too painful for you. Record yourself using a smartphone or a microphone, whatever you've got available. Most people have got a smartphone. That makes it super easy. And then once you can either dictate or use some kind of dictation software, you don't even need that anymore. You can just get the audio transcribed. Like record yourself in 30-minute intervals and go to a website like turboscribe.ai, 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 and submit your 30-minute audios, get them fully transcribed. Again, we're getting words down on pages, and that's a really quick way to do it. And you're going to need to edit later anyway. So why not talk your book? Another really good thing for people who are just getting started, because you're going to get over perfectionism eventually if you stay in the process. If you do nothing, I'm sorry to say, you're never going to overcome procrastination. You're never going to overcome not being good enough or inadequate or unworthy. But if you just begin the process and start doing it, you'll learn some things. So, and blocking daily for a year, it will be a really helpful and useful process for you if you do it. Get used to the idea of writing daily, right? First of all, that's what it's going to do for you. Next, it's going to get you used to the publishing when your draft is quote unquote good enough. You're not going to have a lot of time to polish every single blog post you write. When you're publishing daily, you're going to have to go with good enough, right? Especially if you've got other things going on, other ventures, other ideas you're exploring. If you got work, if you got kids, if you got a significant other, time is of the essence. You're going to have to start publishing when it's good enough, not when it's perfect. It's also going to get you used to the idea of sharing your work publicly. Your book is going to be public, like it or not, and it ought to be, because you should get some royalties for your books. I should get royalties for my books. Shouldn't we all? What's wrong with that? This is how things progress in the world. People don't just get up and do things when money's not involved, for the most part. Like things like health, yeah, people do some things about their health. But when it comes to like work, stuff that's hard, like quote unquote, like writing is hard, isn't it? A lot of people think writing is hard. People expect to get paid. It's weird, but I'd say it's, it's sound. So you should get paid. I should get paid. You might as well get used to having things go public. Next, you get used to the idea of receiving feedback. Well, here's a little news. Unless you direct your friends, unless you've got an email list, unless you've got family, unless you tell your mom that you're writing a blog post, you're probably not going to get any feedback. But there's the odd chance that if you're publishing daily, someone's going to find you and they'll leave a comment, and it might not be something that you enjoy reading. Get used to it. You're going to get criticism. If you're public at all, people are going to direct stuff at you. That's how this works. So bottom line, if you start blogging daily for a year, you'll improve. Your writing will get better. You'll find your voice. You'll start to figure out how you want to communicate what you need to communicate, and you'll find an audience. That's not a promise that you're going to find an audience, but you're probably going to get in front of more people than you would if you just sat there for another year doing nothing. Another year will have passed, you'll be a year older, and nothing will have happened. So why not blog daily? That'll help you get over perfectionism. I promise you. Do it. Next, on the topic of writing consistently. Again, think of the slide as being supplemental to everything I say. I think these are decent tips. Building a routine, making it frictionless, reward your progress. These are all really good tips. I'm going to bring you some of my thoughts and my perspective on this whole thing. Writing consistently. We've already talked about blogging, but blogging under a pseudonym. For those who are terrified of going public in any way, shape, or form, sharing any of the work, doing anything before trying to get their mindset or psychology together, or whatever it is they're doing in the background, I don't know. You're having trouble getting started, whatever the reason. If you can't stomach writing and putting yourself out there, then just adopt a new persona. I don't care what it is. It could be Tasty Frog Splat 047 or something crazy like that. And just start publishing. That'll get you going consistently. No one's going to care anyway, probably, even if you publish under your own name, at least at first. But if you put it under a pseudonym, no one knows, no one cares. You get to remain anonymous. That's the beauty of the internet. Next. I would suggest taking on freelancing gigs. Again, this is for people who have trouble writing consistently. Gain some experience writing to deadlines for real money. There's less in this work like this available. Yeah, it's not like before, for sure. I think there is still work like this available, though. You could check out the pro blogger job boards. You could advertise on Upwork. There's different ways of getting freelancing writing gigs. You can write for certain sites that pay authors. You could write for sites that don't pay authors. But whatever it is, take on some freelancing gigs. Get used to writing to deadlines. That'll get you writing consistently. It's important. And it was an important part of my development too, working for companies like Ghost Blog Writers. Next, document the journey. Okay. And this could be your entire blog concept. It doesn't even need to be anything else. In fact, this could just be your Facebook page, private, in a niche corner somewhere where no one notices. You could just write all of your ideas down like they were the best things in sliced bread. They could be funny ideas. They could be weird ideas. They could be business ideas. Who cares? Start a Facebook page, start a blogger blog, start a Medium, whatever it is, and just document all your thoughts. And they could be short. They don't have to be long. There's no word count pressure here. If you're not doing freelancing gigs, yeah, you're going to have to write to a word count. You're going to have to research. It's going to have to be well written. So those are healthy pressures that a writer should get used to, I believe. But if you do something like documenting the journey and writing down all your ideas, there's no pressure for anything. I'd still suggest doing it and approaching it consistently and regularly, but document your thoughts. Your things are going to come to you on a daily basis, even if repetitive. And if they're repetitive, you get to analyze your own psychology. So I don't see the downside. Next, let's look at self-editing strategies. You will have to self-edit as a self-published author. If you don't, you're probably going to spend a pretty penny in editors. Sometimes hiring editing or editors is a good thing. We'll talk more about editors momentarily. I think most people who are just getting started, though, don't expect to spend $400, $1,000, $2,000 to edit their book, and would much rather kind of keep that money if possible, or maybe work with a few friends who are willing to do it for a pizza and a beer, whatever it is. So, this is self-editing for most authors. I would say it's going to be important. My first suggestion would be spaced repetition. Now, this is something I generally suggest or talk about when I'm talking about personal development specifically, because it's good to go back to the books you read. It's good to go back to the podcasts you listen to, the audios, the courses, whatever work that you've done in learning different things and growing yourself are worth going back to periodically, if not multiple times per year, some maybe multiple times over the course of many years or decades, whatever the case is. But it's worth repeating things for the sake of not just learning, but things tend to change because you change. And there can be value in writing your book over a period of time, right? Because spaced repetition in writing your book will mean, okay, I spent the first 20 days of the month writing, and I'm going to spend the next 10 days taking a break. And I'm going to come back to it 10 days later. If you did cycles like that, and you keep returning to each chapter to see it from a fresh perspective, you're going to figure things out. Rather than being so close to the project, working on it every single day, reading the same chapters every single day, if you come back to them periodically and just have a strategy or a schedule set up around that, you'll find ways to improve, or you'll find areas that need to improve, and you'll do the work. Next, there's built-in spell check and grammar tools. These can help somewhat. It's not like they're going to revolutionize your book in any particular way, but they might draw your attention to some rather obvious errors that are worth correcting, whether it's Microsoft Word or Google Docs, or honestly, any kind of the most common applications have built-in spell check and grammar tools. You can use them. On the same vein, there's Grammarly or similar. This is really an excellent tool. It can help you improve your writing in a variety of different ways, in terms of tone, in terms of your grammar, in terms of your spelling. It offers a lot of great suggestions, but you have to be mindful because you're the one accepting those changes. Not all changes suggested by Grammarly are necessarily good or the right ones. And so you gotta kind of have to have a head on your head about which ones are worth implementing and which ones you are going to implement. Next up would be to gather feedback. And so this is self-editing, well, with the help of people that you know. And more likely than not, this will be friends and family and people who are willing to do it for pizza and beer. Bottom line, share your manuscript with a few friends, or even just with a few members of your target audience. Like, you're hopefully writing to someone. You have at least one person in mind, or a couple people in mind as far as who you're writing for. Think of them, or get people like them to read it and give you some feedback. And I would say, if a lot of questions and concerns come up, and especially like repetitive ones, then it's probably in your best interest to hire an editor to address those issues. There's things like idioms and colloquialisms, and I don't even like to think about all the isms myself. When I'm using them, I'm using them intentionally because I have a lot of experience behind me. Let's not talk about how many years. I have a ton of experience behind me in writing, so I'm conscious and aware of using certain types of words when I use them. If you are not, then it's probably good to get an editor and You can add some additional clarity to know when to change things when they need to change. Let's talk about beta readers, finding them and using their feedback effectively. If you're not familiar with the concept of a beta, there's such a thing as beta testing. It's typically applicable to software applications and video games. What happens is, let's get some people to test this before it gets released into the public and see if it's any good and what changes need to be made and what errors there are. Beta readers, same thing. If they read your book, they can help you identify problems or errors. They can help share like even some broad strokes feedback as far as whether your messaging is good or bad, whether the story is effective or not, whether your ideas are landing or not, can give you some valuable feedback that way. Again, though, as with most things, I don't know if you've noticed about me, but I believe in freedom and not being a slave to any one thing. So if you're going to use beta readers at all, I strongly suggest like having your head on your shoulders about what you want to accomplish, what your vision for the book is, because in some ways it might be more right than what others might have to say about it. So let's talk about that first. The first thing you need to know about beta readers is you don't need beta readers. You can get them, but again, recognize that as a self-publisher or a self-published author, everything's going to cost something. The only thing that doesn't really cost you up front, if you utilize tools like Amazon KDP, is publishing and printing. Won't cost you a dime. That's the amazing thing about print-on-demand services. But virtually anything else you want to do in terms of interior layout, maybe you need specialized research, you might have to pay for resources, you might have to pay for books, editing, graphic design, all that kind of stuff, photography, all that kind of stuff could end up costing you. So you also have to weigh the pros and cons of who you need to bring on and for what reason. But you don't need beta readers, particularly if you know your voice, you know what needs to be said and what you want to be said and how you want to say it. That's where beta readers are just going to be categorically wrong. I see another hello there. Hello, good to see you. Emoji cat user. It's a great name. Great to see you. Welcome. Hope you're enjoying this so far. I see a bunch of new people joining in today. Really grateful to have you here. And looks like we've kind of hit a vein with a topic here, which is always nice to see as well. Next, if you don't have a budget, well, let me correct that. If you have a budget and no time, you can use a service. There's beta reader services. So without you having to go out and collect information about your target audience and reaching out to them each directly and then asking for permission to send your book and then actually sending them your book and waiting for them to read it and get back to you and pestering them until they do get back to you with needed feedback, you can just use services. You can hire people on sites like Fiverr, which is a freelancer marketplace. There are also services like AutoCrit, AUTOCRIT, and Your Beta Reader. Increasingly, I believe, maybe not from top to bottom, maybe not as a comprehensive solution, but increasingly, I think a lot of people are using AI to do beta reader type tasks. And I don't know how much that's going to help you. Like, AI is all too willing to affirm your ideas as being excellent and all too willing to give feedback that it really doesn't know anything about at the end of the day. It's been trained on data, but it doesn't really have an opinion at the end of the day as far as how your book should look. It's just going to mostly tell you, oh, this is great, this is great. Here's a slight spelling suggestion, but this is great. Like a shit sandwich. So, be wary, I guess, if there's like AI beta readers. Next, if you have time and no budget, again, ask your friends, get some help from your friends, preferably those you would identify as your target customer. You don't necessarily need 100 beta readers, okay? But obviously it's good if it's detail-oriented people. It's best if it's meticulous, well-organized people that you know, and get them to read your book and offer some feedback. But you need to be realistic about timelines. You might have to create some kind of incentive for them reading. Maybe, depending on your book structure, you find 10 people and you have each person read one chapter. That's probably far more realistic than getting 10 people to read all chapters, or get 2 people to read each chapter. That might work better if you're going to ask friends to do it on a pizza and beer budget. Next, use your discernment with feedback. And this is, for me, this has been super important. You get feedback, sure, but you don't have to implement everything. In fact, there's times when you wouldn't want to. So evaluate feedback alongside your goals and your overall intent. What are you trying to say? How are you trying to say it? How is it supposed to come across to your readers? And if the reader feedback forces you in a different direction, in a more vanilla direction, this is the biggest problem. You don't need your book to be vanilla. Look at news headlines, learn from these things. They're controversial. Learn from magazines. Look at the stuff that people buy. Look at the most ridiculous stuff. You're going to find that headlines are almost always sensational in some way, shape, or form. How is your book going to sell if it's completely vanilla? If you take a stance on nothing, if you're just kind of nice to everyone, it's not going to do much. So you really need to look at that. So prevent your book from becoming vanilla is the point. Don't feel like you need to make all the revisions readers suggest. Although I would certainly pay attention to glaring problems and omissions. If people keep saying, I didn't get this part, okay, your idea probably needs to be explained in some way, shape, or form, or made a little bit easier for the reader to understand. If there's omissions, it's this statistic or this thought or this idea needs a little more backing up to convince the reader. Stuff like that is probably worth fixing, but just be on the lookout for those types of glaring problems and omissions and fix them. The revision process that actually improves your book, I do find it funny that after all we've already talked about, people still fixate and focus on revisions. I guess it's maybe to follow the traditional publishing model, because you come up with your first draft and chances are it's going to go through a few drafts before the publisher says, okay, now it's ready for editing. And then in the editing phase, it's going to go through a few different revisions. When I'm getting to work on a book, I'm generally convinced that it's something that's going to be good. I have a feeling that this is something people are going to want to read, and it's going to offer people good information that they're going to want to plug into. So it's going to go through revisions, absolutely, but the core concept is probably not going to be altered so far from how it originated. So use revisions, definitely. You will need to revise 100%. Be mindful of the process. For new writers, probably you will need to do more rather than less. But as you get used to this process, you probably find that you don't go through as many revisions. You're more so going to be invested in writing the content and getting the manuscript done. So, number one, utilize the feedback you've received. This would include feedback you've gotten from friends or family or your editor or your beta readers, if you got feedback at all. Sometimes self-published authors don't need it, but if you're just getting started, probably a good idea. If you're still new to self-publishing, probably a good idea. Identify commonly recurring issues and keep an eye out for them in your book. So if there's something that's come up once or twice, it's entirely possible and likely that you're making the same mistake multiple times through your manuscript, combing over that again and again until those sections are revised and you've addressed that issue is good, and make needed changes. Right? Some of them are unneeded. So that's why I'm saying needed changes. Make the needed changes to your manuscript. Next, do multiple passes at preset intervals. This kind of goes back to what I said earlier about spaced repetition. Your schedule could be anything. I simply gave the example of there's 30 days in a month, so spend 20 days editing, or let's say 20 days writing or editing, depending on what stage you're at, and spend 10 days reflecting and thinking and not touching the book. Don't even look at it, and then come back. 20 days writing, editing, 10 days off, 20 days on, 10 days off. Could be a different schedule than that. That's just one way of approaching it. There's many schedules that can work, but create some kind of environment where spaced repetition can happen in a vacuum. For me, it's typical for me to go through my book 3 to 6 times after I deem the manuscript complete. So I'm reading through my book a few times before I'm ever publishing and getting it out there. That's pretty much part of the revision process. But at that point, it's quite likely I'm fixing small things, not major things. Then get additional help if needed, especially if you've got a budget. You might go through all these revisions and say to yourself, I still don't know if this book's any good. I still don't know if this is worth putting out there. I'm not sure I want to publish. Now, a little bit of fear is okay, because we should push through that and publish anyway. But if you're like, I don't know if this is quite the best thing it can be yet, I don't know if I'm proud of it, just get additional help. It could be friends and family, editor and beta readers, again, just like we talked about. In some cases, if you're working with an editor, negotiate with them. See if they'll be willing to do another pass for free. Some might, or for a reduced rate. Negotiate, ask them, see if they can do anything. Hey, I really appreciated all the work you did on my book. I'm not quite ready to publish yet. I don't know why I'm getting signed out of Google Docs. This is happening in real time. Thank you. Thanks, Google. What the hell, man? I'm trying to go through a presentation here for my viewers. Jesus. Okay. So where was I? Revision process. So you might be able to convince your editor to do a second pass for you before you're done with the book and you're ready to submit it. So see if you can do that. But remember, there are books out there by known authors that I'm sure go through a long process of editing and revisions, and still they have glaring errors in them. I've read many books, and I've read many books like that, where I'm like, why is The Wolf of Wall Street have so many errors in there? It doesn't make sense. Maybe Jordan Belfort insisted no one edit this. I don't know. I have a feeling he didn't even write that book, though, as many celebrity authors are known to do. Usually work with ghostwriters, so I don't even know. But my point is, there's books out there by known authors that suck. They're just not very good, and they contain errors of all kinds, including spelling and grammatical errors. So you got to ask yourself, like, revisions are good, but how much does it matter? How much time and effort should you put into it? Really think about it. And also recognize, like, nowadays, yes, it used to be that if you're working with, like, we're talking about self-publishing. It used to be that if you were working with a traditional publisher, once it was out there, you might get a shot at doing some kind of edit or second edition or third edition, but usually not without quite a bit of persuasion and trying to negotiate and figure out what that's going to look like. And that could be painful. So it really is, if possible, it's much better to go the self-published route, because it's not that hard. If you're using Amazon KDP, you log into the back end and you swap out your cover, or you swap out the title, or you swap out the description, or you swap out the manuscript. So you put something out there that's not perfect. Don't worry about it not being perfect, because nowadays you can edit, and once it's out there, it's out there. That's just not true anymore. It's easy, it's quick. I can go in there and edit one of my books today and resubmit it, and it'll probably be live by tomorrow. Seriously. So that's another reason not to insist too much on perfectionism. When is your manuscript truly ready? When is it truly ready? Again, I feel like these are some reasonably good tips that AI has given us, but my perspective is, first, it's ready when you say it's ready, right? I like autonomy. I like making my own decisions. I like freedom. I like saying, I'm proud of this. I like it. I'm going to put it out there. So it's ready when you say it's ready. You are, after all, looking to become a self-published author. So you need to get used to calling the shots, right? especially concerning the completion of your book. You get to call the shots. Next, are you proud of the work? This is a big one. You can only be proud of something in the moment, right? You're not allowed to go into the future 3 years from now, say, oh man, I could have done so much better. No, 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 no. You were proud of it upon publish. That's what matters. Okay, because you're going to get better. And I've gotten a lot better. The difference between book 13 and book 1 and book 14 is going to be bonkers by comparison. I feel like it's going to be light years ahead of book 13. You're going to improve. You're going to get better through practice and repetition. So really, it's really about, are you proud of the work in the moment? You don't get to look back on it 5 years from now and say, I'm not proud of that. It doesn't work like that. Be proud of it now. And if you're proud of it now, put it out. Next, are you a little scared to publish? This is a good sign. This is an excellent sign. That's when you know your manuscript is ready, because you're going to say something, or you're about to say something that needs to be said, but perhaps you find yourself a little bit confronted by the notion of saying such a thing to people. That's a good thing. If there isn't a little bit of fear attached to publishing, you're doing it wrong. So, because otherwise you're just being vanilla, like we talked about earlier. You're not saying anything that's worth saying or worthwhile. So you should be a little scared. Finally, behind the scenes of my writing process, it's worth mentioning that I really don't have a singular winning method of writing. I've tried a number of approaches, and I can sort of break them down into three. So that's what I'm going to cover here. The first is that some of my books were blogged. So like I suggested earlier, you can blog daily, or you can blog periodically, or whatever, and each post can form a piece of the book. That's exactly what I did with the Music Entrepreneur Companion Guide. I broke the sections down into smaller pieces and wrote and published those. And that's when I was publishing daily. And it was easy for me to do because I was basically expanding on another book I'd written called The Music Entrepreneur Code. So I looked at the Music Entrepreneur Code and I was like, okay, let me explain that. And I would explain each section and try to share a story or a case study or an example so I could expand on what the book was talking about. So it's almost like a reference guide in that sense, but that's how I wrote the Music Entrepreneur Companion Guide. In the case of Digital Nomad, I documented my daily journey. Again, that came out of daily blogging. At the time, I was like, oh, I'm going to launch my newsletter. That's what I was excited about. And instead, I went on this really insane 2-year journey of getting sued and not declaring bankruptcy, but consumer proposal, almost losing everything I had and being scammed out of it. It was insane, but that was the journey I documented. And of course, it didn't take long. I don't know, I think it was 12 or 13 days in to writing and documenting each day that I knew was going to turn into a book. But that came out of daily blogging. The next approach is some books were written at specific places and times. This was particularly true. The most prominent example was the Ferry Letters. I wrote the Ferry Letters as I was ferrying back and forth between Nanaimo and Vancouver last year. And every ferry ride is around 1 hour and 40 minutes. That was my consistent place and time for writing Ferry Letters. If it wasn't there, I basically just did not think about it, and I left it. So if I wasn't on a ferry ride, I did not write a letter except once. The final letter was written from home. If you can make writing a part of, the point is, if you can make writing a part of normal or occasional occurring activities, whether it's riding the train, intentionally making time to go to the coffee shop, or even while flying in a plane, maybe it may help create a unique environment all its own for writing. And use those if those are reasonably frequent occurrences for you. If you only fly once a year, I can't imagine that being a productive writing session. But if you fly often, then that might be something that would work for you. Finally, my most common approach to writing, or my process, is to put the action in my to-do list. So in my to-do list, if you were to look at it every day, I've always got a daily to-do list. Always. Every single day, new to-do list. It says advance writing. So that's an action. If it just said, I think write would work as well. That's also an action. but it says advanced writing, so my brain interprets it as an action. A lot of people's to-do list is written in a way that their brain does not interpret it as an action. It's just an item on a page. So it might say blog post. Well, a blog post is not a to-do item. It's not an action. Write a blog post will be an action. You have to put things down on your to-do list and word them in a way that looks like an action. So I usually take about an hour to concentrate on writing per day. That's the process. That's the basic discipline, but the other methods worked for me too. Next, I sometimes use editors or beta readers. It's not all the time. It's not a frequent, occurrence. But when I was getting my first book, The New Music Industry, up and running, and that's still my most successful, I asked my girlfriend and one of my colleagues and one of my musician friends to look it over. And they gave me feedback, and that helped me make changes and modifications that were useful. Not a lot, and they didn't have a lot of suggestions, so they were pretty happy on the content side, but some spelling, some grammatical things. So, I mean, that was promising, though, to put my book in front of people who certainly would be open to giving me critical feedback and getting it back and knowing that it's pretty good as is, the content anyway. With flashes of elation, I used a professional editor, which was a privilege, really. But it is what ended up delaying the development of that book, because I got overwhelmed by all the feedback and all the suggestions she had. I think it was something like 200 or 300 suggested edits, and which have included really like revisions of vast sections within that book and potentially even deleting chapters. At some point, I got the wise idea. Like when I set a deadline for myself and I set up pre-orders and I said, I'm going to be publishing Flashes of Elation on this day. I went in there and I looked up the keyboard shortcuts and I did the one for accept all. So I just accepted all her suggestions. I just said, good, done. Yeah, right on. And then I did another once over or twice over or thrice over. To see whether I was completely satisfied with it. But that was probably what I should have done in the first place, because I got overwhelmed by it, and that was no good. And it just spent way too much time in development, and maybe nowhere near as good as it would have been if it had come out sooner. Just some things are timing, guys. Good to remember. But at the end of the day, it got done. I accepted all her suggestions, and I worked from there. Actually, before we go there. And nowadays, I will share a sample with potential readers. That's the most common method, or to gather praise, or often to gather praise, like testimonials or just quotes. This is my preferred method because gives me a pretty good sense that I'm on the right track. If they liked a chapter and they're willing to give me a quote for that chapter, now, first of all, I can use that as marketing material, right? I think it's one of the most important things. I feel like that's one of the reasons the new music industry ended up succeeding, is because I collected a lot of good quotes and I was able to use them as praise for my book. So it accomplishes multiple things. One, it gets people reading your stuff. Two, it gives you getting people feedback on your stuff. And then three, you get to use this as a means of improvement and marketing material. I don't know if there were three things there, but anyway, I think you got what I meant. Last, I reserve the right to have autonomy concerning all decisions. It's probably what I should say, is concerning all decisions. It's whatever. Long day, lots of writing. This is sometimes how it comes out. So I say this is important to me. And different things are going to be important to different self-publishing authors. So you got to consider what's important to you, but autonomy to me is paramount, because I believe books are business tools, and what else would they be? I'm not sure. They can be passion projects, don't get me wrong, but I don't know anybody. We have to go back to this whole notion of getting paid or not getting paid and guilt or fear around that. Nobody engages in this much work. Nobody puts 13 books out hoping no one's going to buy their book. Let's get real, right? Like let's get really gritty real here, like uncomfortable real, because that's the truth. So, because the way I look at books is they can be used as business cards. I can hand them at events, say, hey, here's my business card. Hope you enjoyed it. I've done that before. And it's the kind of business card that people might actually keep and do something with and actually contact you. Books can be used to help you get press and interviews. Really, probably the preferred way for a lot of people, because if you don't do that, all you have is your book and your royalties. And your royalties are not going to add up to huge sums of money unless you've got one book that sells millions and millions of copies, or if you've got many books out there, like many books out there that collectively sell a good number. Otherwise, the royalties amount to nothing. So you might as well use it to get press and interviews. Books can help you generate leads and grow your list. If used correctly, traditional publishers won't let you use them that way. Like at the end of every chapter saying, hey, by the way, if you enjoyed this, get your free template at blah, blah, blah.com. You can do that if it's your self-published book. You can send people to any links of your choosing, including affiliate links, as long as that's in your disclaimer somewhere. Traditional publisher, they might not let you do that. Books can also help you convert business. In other words, there's different ways that might play out. One is people read your books, get a sense of who you are, like who you are, get educated, and then want to work with you, hire you as a coach or a consultant, or for your copywriting or graphic design, whatever it is you offer. Your book can help convince someone to work with you. So it can help you convert business. Again, it can happen in other ways too, but that's another benefit. Very, very rarely do books make money on their own. That's why we have to think of them as tools, and maybe even better said, marketing tools than business tools. Books are marketing tools and should be deployed and used that way frequently, as often as possible, to the extent possible. I like to reserve the right to say what I want to say. That's also important to me. Direct the reader to take next steps and not have to adhere to conventions I think are silly. After all, Earl Nightingale said this: whatever the majority of people is doing under any given circumstances, if you do the exact opposite, you will probably never make another mistake as long as you live. So this is in consideration of traditional publishers. If you just do what they do, you're probably doing things wrong, because they have inefficient methods of getting people onto their website. They have inefficient methods of getting people onto their email list. They have inefficient methods of upselling. Their job is just to sell books to the extent possible. They're not thinking in terms of business opportunities and all the ways they could leverage a book. So again, that Earl Nightingale quote, and it's going to apply to anything you do in life. Whatever the majority of people is doing under any given circumstances, if you do the exact opposite, you'll probably never make another mistake as long as you live. If you do the exact opposite. So that's my presentation on manuscripts. I hope you enjoyed this. Would you like to be featured in our group of 2,100 plus people in our Facebook group called Spark Infinity? Spark Infinity began as a place for creatives, by creatives, for creators, by creators, and it still is. So let me say that again. As a place for creatives, by creatives, for creators, by creators, and it still is. The thing we're interested in most is your story. More than happy to create presentations like this, share insights with you as we've done. But the thing that brings us the greatest joy is spotlighting you, giving you an opportunity to share your story. Whether it's in an interview, a casual conversation, a roundtable, or even a show and tell, we're happy to accommodate whatever format suits you best. So if you're ready to go live with us, drop a me in the chat or in the comments, and I'll get in touch with you. And look forward to talking with you. Also, we still have quite a few people in the group who aren't entirely familiar with the way things work. I still see you posting your books or your affiliate links or other products for recommendations. I really don't want to see any of that until you've actually been on our show, at least once. After that, sure. But before you've been on our show, posting all this self-interest, self-promotional stuff doesn't really fly. And honestly, why would you come to the party and just be like, buy my shit? It's not good manners. Come to the party first and introduce yourself and have a good time and be cool and be a good hang. So that's why I say, what better way to showcase your work than to be featured on our show for 30 to 60 minutes? What better way? Is there a better way? Just posting into the void? I don't think that's a better way. So come live with us, and then we're happy to promote everything you're doing. So again, we're all about spotlighting people. We just want to do it the right way. Drop a me in the chat if you're ready to go live with us, and I'll be in touch. Thanks so much for joining us today, Spark Infinity. I hope you got a lot out of this. And if you're not already in our Facebook group, make sure to find our Facebook group. It's Spark Infinity. It should be easy to find on Facebook if you use the little search tool. Thanks so much for joining us today. See you again next time.